Hey guys, Michael Kummer here. In today's video I want to talk to you about sleep tracking and introduce you to my top sleep trackers that I've used over the past couple of months and years. Now before we get started, make sure you subscribe to this channel and you click on the little alert button so you get notified when I publish more videos like this, and that also helps me grow the channel, so I much appreciate that. I should also mention that I have a fairly in-depth review and comparison of my favorite sleep trackers on my blog. I'm going to link it down below. And each of the sleep trackers, at least most of the sleep trackers that I'm going to cover in this video, I also have in-depth and dedicated reviews and discount codes. I'm going to link all of that down in the description, so check that out to get more information and to score a discount if you want to purchase any of those devices. Now before we talk about the individual sleep trackers, let's talk about accuracy a little bit, because a sleep tracker is only good if it's accurate. Otherwise, it's useless. And accuracy is tricky because arguably the gold standard of sleep tracking is a sleep lab where you get, you spend the night, you get attached to a bunch of wires that measure your brain activity, and that's arguably the most accurate way of figuring out what stage of sleep you're in based on your brain activity, the different brain waves and their patterns. But even that is not 100% accurate, because imagine, you go to a sleep lab, you get hooked up to all of those wires, and then you have to sleep in a place that's new to you, that's uncomfortable, maybe sterile looking, you have a bunch of wires attached. Chances are you're not gonna sleep that great, right? So even that might not be a good representation of how your sleep really is when you sleep in the comfort of your home. Plus, the brainwave activity is up to interpretation of the technician that's looking at it. And even there are some discrepancies of how one would interpret the brainwave versus another. So also not 100% accurate. But as far as sleep tracking at home is concerned, the next couple of gadgets that I'm going to introduce you to are fairly accurate and most of them have scientific studies that back up the accuracy to a degree, so we can kind of gauge how accurate they are in comparison to the gold standard, which is the sleep lab. Besides accuracy, the other thing we need to consider is what features make a good sleep tracker. And so here is the things that I'm looking for when picking a sleep tracker. Number one, it needs to be able to detect when I fall asleep, obviously. It needs to know when I sleep and when I'm awake. And so being able to identify the exact time when I fall asleep, when I wake up in the middle of the night, everyone has awakenings during the night. Most of them you don't remember, but you do wake up during the night. And then it obviously needs to be able to identify when I'm finally up in the morning and ready to roll. So when my sleep has ended. So that's the most basic feature a sleep tracker needs to have. And most of them can do that somewhat accurately. Some of the cheaper sleep trackers that only rely on your heart rate and maybe movement data might mistakenly think you're sleeping if you're just sitting still on the couch watching TV. I've seen it numerous times in the past with Fitbits and other less expensive sleep trackers. But being able to correctly identify when you're sleeping and when you're not, that's an important feature, obviously. Number two is I'd like to be able to understand how much time I spend in the individual stages of sleep. And that's where it gets a little bit trickier already. Most sleep trackers can differentiate between light sleep and non-light sleep, so deep sleep and REM sleep. But differentiating between deep and REM sleep is even more complicated, because from a movement, heart rate perspective, from a skin temperature perspective maybe, they are somewhat similar. There is not such a clear distinction between deep sleep and light sleep, let's say, because in deep sleep, your heart rate is a little bit higher, there might be more movement involved. If you're in deep sleep, you're not moving at all and your heart rate is usually at its lowest. But then between deep and REM sleep, that's another issue that not all sleep trackers can do and can do reliably. The next thing I want to see in a sleep tracker is tracking my heart rate. I want to know what my heart rate is during sleep. I want to know what my heart rate variability potentially is. I want to know what my breathing rate or respiratory rate is. I want to know maybe what my blood oxygen saturation is during sleep. So all of those biomarkers can help me better understand how well I slept, how rested I am in the morning, and some of the other factors that I might be interested in. Now, with that said, let's talk about my top sleep trackers that I've used over the past couple of years. Number one, the Whoop strap. That's my absolute favorite. I've been wearing Whoop since 2019, and not only because it can do so many more things than just sleep tracking, but as far as sleep tracking is concerned, it can differentiate between the various stages of sleep. It measures my blood oxygen saturation, my heart rate variability. That's the difference in timing between heartbeats. I have a separate video on that if you want to know why that's important, and a lot of other things. So Whoop is fairly accurate. They have studies to back up its accuracy. I want to say Whoop is somewhere between maybe 85 to 95% accurate as compared to a sleep lab. So it's accurate enough for me to figure out how I slept and monitor some of the sleep patterns to see if my sleep changes over time. In terms of sleep stage detection, Whoop is fairly accurate, but what I always recommend is with any sleep tracker on the market, regardless of how good it is, I always recommend looking at the deep and REM sleep as a combined metric. Yes, it's good to understand how much time you spend in deep sleep versus in REM sleep, but ultimately both of those phases are the restorative phases of sleep. So those are important, and those two combined should make up approximately 40% of your total sleep. So with Whoop, it breaks it up, but I usually look at the combined number to make sure I get enough restorative sleep, because the body is usually smart enough to pick or to get deep sleep and REM sleep in a ratio that's best for my recovery, depending on what my needs are. One of the downsides of Whoop is you need a subscription. So you don't buy the hardware, you buy a subscription, and as long as you buy a subscription, you can use the device and get all of its benefits. There are some people who like that, other people who don't. I've discussed it in more depth in my dedicated Whoop review, so check that out. But you need to sign up for a subscription if you want to use the Whoop strap and you don't pay upfront for the hardware. The other thing I really like about Whoop is the battery life. It has a 5-day battery life, so I don't have to charge it very often, and when I do, I can slide on a battery pack, so I don't have to take the device off my wrist. Speaking of wrist, Whoop can be worn on a wrist, or you can stick it into special clothing. There is a clothing line from Whoop called Whoop Body, and I have underwear, they have shorts, they have shirts, and so you can place the sensor maybe in the seam of your underwear, and so you don't have to wear it on the wrist if that's something you don't like. Another disadvantage of Whoop is it doesn't support airplane mode, so I cannot disable the Bluetooth radio, and so you have some EMF exposure, even though if the phone is in airplane mode, so if the device is not actively communicating with the phone, the EMF exposure or radiation is fairly low. I've measured this with my EMF meter because one of my readers of my blog post asked me about that, so the exposure is fairly low, but still there is EMF exposure because you cannot put Whoop into airplane mode. Number 2 is 8 Sleep. That's the smart temperature controlled mattress and mattress cover that I sleep on every night. Now, 8 Sleep is not a sleep tracker per se, it just comes with sleep tracking capabilities. So as I said, it's the 8 Sleep Pod Pro system that I have includes the mattress, includes the cover, includes a separate hub that's next to the bed, and it controls the temperature of my mattress surface basically, but it also has fairly advanced and accurate sleep tracking capabilities built in. So it can measure the different stages of sleep, and it does it fairly accurately as compared to Whoop. It measures my heart rate variability, my movements. Obviously it cannot measure blood oxygen saturation because it is not attached to my body by any means. But that is also an advantage because the mattress cover itself, the sensors, don't produce EMFs. So, only the hub that's next to the bed does, and that you can, cover if you want to, that you can, block that EMF radiation coming from the hub, but at least in bed, close to your body, 8 Sleep does not produce any electromagnetic fields or electromagnetic radiation. And it has the bed cooling built in as well, so that's really nice. And I've been using 8 Sleep also for a number of years. I really like it, and the sleep tracking in the morning when I check out my numbers, they compare fairly well with Whoop, so I consider it somewhere in the same ballpark as far as the accuracy is concerned. Number 3 is the Oura Ring. I've also worn Oura for quite some time. This is the latest generation here, generation 3 I think it is. And the sleep tracking is accurate, but I want to say not as accurate as Whoop. However, Oura is in the process of rolling out the new sleep tracking algorithm that's supposed to roll out later in 2022 or in summer of 2022. I don't know exactly, they haven't rolled it out yet, so I have the latest hardware, but the software cannot make use of all of the hardware features the Ring currently has. So we'll wait for that to see if the accuracy changes, but what I really like about Oura is the form factor. I mean, it's really a marvel of technology to put all of these sensors into a tiny ring that you can wear. It's super comfortable. It's arguably more comfortable than wearing something on your wrist, even though Whoop doesn't really bother me. The thing is with the Ring, sizing is important. If you don't get the correct size, or if your fingers, expand and shrink as they normally do with, changes in temperature, changes in blood pressure, etc., then the ring might not or the sensor in the ring might not be in close contact with your skin, and that can negatively impair its accuracy. During sleep, that's usually not a problem because you're stationary, you're somewhat still, you don't move a lot, so it's less of a concern during sleep tracking, but it's still something that you want to keep in mind. Now, with Oura, in the past, you just purchased the hardware, that was it, and then there was no additional cost. However, with the release of the Oura Ring Generation 3, Oura actually introduced a membership. It only cost a couple of dollars. I think it's like $5-6 or so per month, or maybe $8. But still, you have to buy the hardware and then you have to sign up for that membership to get all of the benefits from the platform. That's a disadvantage, but it is what it is. Otherwise, it's fairly accurate. There are some features that I've mentioned, like SpO2 tracking, that Oura hasn't implemented yet in software, so I'm waiting for a firmware update or a software update to expose those capabilities that the hardware already has. But beyond that, it's fairly accurate, it's convenient, it's comfortable to wear. Battery life is similar to the Whoop, about 5 days or so. And I really like the Oura Ring as well, and let's see what the new update brings. Number 4 is the Biostrap. Biostrap is much like the Oura Ring and Whoop, a sleep tracker, but also a fitness and recovery tracker. Now, as far as the sleep tracking is concerned, if you just buy the strap, you pay up front, buy the strap, and don't pay for any additional memberships, then you get basic sleep tracking, meaning the Biostrap samples your heart rate every 2 minutes or every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes. So it doesn't do it very often. And so that might negatively impair its sleep stage detection, meaning that if you go from one sleep stage to another, if during that time Biostrap doesn't sample your heart rate, it might not detect it until 5 minutes later or so. So it might not be as accurate with the basic sleep tracking capabilities. However, if you sign up for the additional sleep lab, which is what I highly recommend if you want to use Biostrap for sleep tracking, then it samples your heart rate constantly. And not only that, with the sleep lab you also get snore detection in combination with your phone. So it works in conjunction with your phone, actually with the microphone inside of your phone. And you also get leg movement detection. So you can detect maybe if you suffer from restless leg syndromes, if you move your legs a lot. I found out with the sleep lab actually that I tend to snore when I consume too much dairy, because dairy increases the mucus production in my sinuses, clogs up my sinuses, and I tend to snore more often. And so I wouldn't have found out if it wasn't for Biostrap, so I really like that. But it requires an extra membership fee. It's only a couple of dollars, so it's not, it's less than, I don't know exactly how much it is, but it's a few dollars that you have to pay extra per month to get the sleep lab and the advanced sleep tracking, which is more accurate, it samples more frequently, and you get those additional features. Now, Biostrap you can, much like the Oura Ring, can put into airplane mode. Whoop, as I said, you cannot do, so that's a feature I really like about Biostrap as well. One differentiator between the Biostrap and some of the other gadgets here that I've mentioned so far is that Biostrap does not differentiate between deep and REM sleep, because the company says they cannot reliably do that, and I appreciate that. So they give you one number and they call it deep sleep, but it's actually deep and REM sleep combined. So when you compare apples to apples, or when you want to compare the output from an Oura Ring, from a Whoop strap, from 8 Sleep and Biostrap, just know that Biostrap has one big number that combines deep and REM sleep. And again, those two combined should make up approximately 40% of your total sleep. And so, yes, it would be nice to see deep and REM sleep separately, but I also appreciate that it's very difficult and might not be accurate even in some of the other devices, so having that combined number is usually good enough. Now, the downside with Biostrap is, especially if you use the sleep lab, which is more accurate because it samples your heart rate data more often, you have to recharge the device every single day. So the battery only lasts for approximately one night and a couple of hours extra if you want to wear it during the day, but you have to charge it every night before going to bed or sometime during the day. You have to take it off for that, put it in that wireless charging dock, and charge the battery. So that's a clear disadvantage in comparison to an Oura Ring and to a Biostrap, which lasts 5 days. Number 5 in my list, and that's the last one that I have for you today, is Muse S. It's a headband. It's an EEG in reality, so it's a headband that measures brain waves. And Muse is really a device meant to help you meditate and to give you biofeedback on how your brain waves change during your meditation sessions. But the Muse S, so there are 2 versions of Muse, Muse and Muse S, and the Muse S stands for sleep, so it has sleep tracking capabilities built in by measuring your brain waves to figure out what stage of sleep you're in. So that's, as I've mentioned initially, a more accurate way of measuring sleep stages or of detecting different sleep stages than just relying on sensors that are attached to your wrist. Now, I really like Muse from an accuracy perspective. I mean, arguably EEG and measuring brainwaves is one of the most accurate way of detecting what stage of sleep you're in. However, the downside with Muse is, first of all, you also have to charge it every night basically. But the bigger disadvantage really is that not only does it not have airplane mode, but it live streams your brainwave activity to the phone. So you cannot have your phone in airplane mode, you have to have Bluetooth on. You can disable the cellular connectivity and Wi-Fi, but Bluetooth has to be on. And it doesn't cache or store any of the data in the sensor, it only streams it to your phone. So if you move in the position that maybe blocks the Bluetooth signal, then there might be some data gaps. But more importantly, by constantly streaming, you get a lot of EMF exposure right around, your head basically, and right around your brain or in the front of your brain. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So I don't recommend using Muse every single day for sleep tracking, much like I do with Whoop and 8 Sleep. But if you want to find out how those devices compare, how accurately it can detect different stages of sleep, then that's what I use Muse S occasionally for. So if I want to find out something and I want to be really certain the data is as good as it can be, Muse S, but not on a daily basis because I don't want to be exposed to EMFs around my brain area here every single night. Now, Muse S is also a one-time purchase, so you sign up, you pay for it, and then there are some optional membership features that you can pay for to get additional meditation sessions, etc. But you don't necessarily have to do that. Just the sleep tracking comes with the device. All right, now before we wrap it up, one more thing about the Apple Watch. You might have noticed I'm wearing an Apple Watch, and some people have asked me, well, why don't you use the Apple Watch for sleep tracking? And my answer so far has been, because it doesn't work reliably, not even with third-party applications, because first of all, the Apple Watch doesn't sample heart rate data very often. It samples it every couple of minutes, and that's not ideal if you want to get an accurate and complete picture of your different sleep stages. And then more importantly, and recently, sleep stage detection wasn't supported, at least not natively, by the Apple Watch. But Apple just hosted their worldwide developer conference, and they announced in watchOS 9 sleep stage tracking. And likely once the new watchOS gets released in fall, probably around September timeframe, Apple is also going to announce, I would assume, a new Apple Watch hardware that might come with a better battery life, so I can actually wear the watch during the day and also overnight without having to charge it before. Because right now I usually charge my Apple Watch at night. So when I go to bed, I put it on the charger, and in the morning I put it back on. Now, there is fast charging. You can charge it to 50% in only, I don't know, half an hour or whatever. So if you charge it during the day, you can make it through the night, but it's a little bit clunky. So maybe with the new hardware, in combination with watchOS 9, we get real sleep stage tracking and good sleep tracking with a good battery life. And I'll make sure I'm gonna test this. And when I update my blog post of the best sleep trackers to include the Apple Watch, if it turns out to be a good contender in comparison to all the other gadgets. Now, with that being said, we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, let me know in the comments what I could have done better. Until next time.